By 2014, Team 600 had become famous all over Chicago and the wider world as both a gang and a collective of drill rappers. 600 started 2014 strong, with one of their first releases being the sequel to their Big Crew anthem 600 on the 30th of January, dropping 600 Part 2. The music video for this track now stands at over 14 million views. And when 600 had released the Part 1, they'd already lost several members, but the original song included L.A. Capone, who was still alive at the time, one of their most loved and respected members and their clear #1 star in the making at the time. Part 1 was the introduction to this all-star drill team to the public. However, after the death of their biggest prospect, L.A. Capone, Part 2 was seemingly 600's way of letting both the fans and their ops know that despite this huge loss, 600 could not be stopped, neither in the drill music scene or in the streets of Chicago. The hook of the song seemed to reference 600 losing members and planning to kill for the gang in revenge. Both S-Dot and Tay 600 would also pay tribute to LA in their verses, while E-Day's verse would have some eerie foreshadowing of the tragic events that would take place not even a month after the video's release, where he rapped about Rondo finishing the job and taking a charge. And talking about foreshadowing, in the video, people can be seen wearing Free D Rose shirts. Now, D Rose is one of the most infamous and dangerous savages in 600 who has been shouted out as a prolific shooter numerous times by other people. At the time of the shooting of the video, D Rose was seemingly locked up, but he would be released already before the music video was released. D Rose, real name Arbir Sardin, was originally from the area known as Motown, which is a large black pea stone stronghold around Sherman Park on the south side, with Moes being a common nickname for the members of their gang, deriving from the Islamic beliefs of the crew. In early photos, a young D Rose can be seen throwing up a 5, which represents the 5-point star that is one of the symbols of the Black Pea Stones and the people nation that they belong to. D Rose's father was a well-respected Black Pea Stone leader known as General Ranger, this name likely deriving from the fact that the Black Pea Stones were originally known as the Blackstone Rangers. General Ranger was known for making money, but also giving back to his community, and he would reportedly hand out school supplies and book bags to children in the area. But unfortunately, Ranger, real name Alaroy Marcus Sardine, would be killed in 2006 during a robbery all the way in Texas. As Tay 600, aka Tay Capone, would later explain in his YouTube channel.
You feel me? His mama and his daddy really from, his mama and his daddy is Motown originals. You feel me? Both of them. His daddy got killed way before all of this. His daddy got killed out of town.
D Rose's mother was also a well-known and loved figure in the area, and D Rose seemingly had a very different upbringing from many of the other kids in the area, as his mother made sure that none of her kids attended the public schools in the area that were well known for their poor performance and problematic behavior, including gang activity. Another detail which Tay 600 would break down in detail on his YouTube channel.
D Rose mama, she a gangster, she from the block. I mean, she from the town, she a real street girl, but she always wanted the best for her kids. Like, she always wanted the best for D Rose and them. Like, when we was a shorty, like I always tell y'all, the shorties, we went to the hood schools, Carter, Dunbar, Sexton, Dulles. D Rose and his siblings didn't go to none of them schools. D Rose and his siblings was going to the private school that was smack dab in the middle of the hood.
Indeed, the other members of 600 attending the public schools in the area would get into all kinds of altercations at school. One of these schools was the Dunbar High School in the Bronzeville neighborhood, which was known for its heavy gang activity and violent gang-related incidents. One Reddit commenter on the Chiracology subreddit shared a story about his uncle attending Dunbar and the various sets that would clash at the school. According to Tay 600, L.A. Capone used to get into fights there weekly due to many of his friends quitting school, leaving him all alone in class to fight against his ops.
And I wasn't cool. Like, LA was like a little scrawny, bro, but he had the heart of a lion. And he ended up going to high school. And by the time he got to the high school where a lot of the guys used to go to, a lot of the guys dropped out, stopped going, got kicked out. And a lot of ops came in. And he was not finna, he was content on going to school, you know what I'm saying? And the ops weren't finna make him not go to school. So he'd go to school and get jumped once or twice a week, or be in a fight, a real bad fight, every week. And it's just like, I'm steady hearing this. I'm coming home from out there, folks ass black, you feel me? Like, but he's still out here and he's still going to school.
While D Rose's parents were both from a gang background, they were doing their best to try and make sure that their son didn't get involved in that lifestyle, and they were giving him and his siblings the best life they possibly could in this troubled neighborhood. Unfortunately, their efforts could ultimately not stop D Rose from becoming the product of his environment, and from a young age, D Rose would hang with his elders on the block, getting increasingly sucked into the gang lifestyle. Many videos would later circulate, seemingly showing D Rose getting active in the streets, where he would be filmed throwing up gang signs.
Take no picture of me, bro. Why you take pictures of me, boy? Why you going? Yeah, that way. Glibby. Cairo. Probably walking Shandale. Nuggo.
One video would go around where he would be seen beating up and robbing an op on camera. D Rose would even film himself after the op shot at him.
Still out, man. These just shooting on my leg, man. It ain't, man. We still up on this L block. Late night, me and Maintain. You know, they was just shooting at our legs of King David. You know.
He would film himself sliding in cars with Rondo, as well as Lil Durk and Chief Whoop, as well as posting clips where he claims he was smoking on Tuka with his shooters.
Let me get that lighter, bro.
Smoking Tuka with my shooters. Smoking Tuka with my shooters.
And despite only dabbling with rap, D-Rose himself was seemingly infatuated with drill music, regularly turning up to the gangbanging anthems that his friends like Chief Keef were making.
I was on that young drilling fussing. Don't get no with the stuff. We gon' drill that. Look at that. That happened now.
Although he was originally from Motown, D-Rose was seemingly an original 600 member who had lived in the neighborhood long before 600 the gang had even formed, having moved there with his family near 59th in Indiana when he was still a little boy. The private school that D-Rose attended also had many Front Street members, which is how he would allegedly first become affiliated with these local gang sets. D-Rose is also reportedly cousins with G Muma and 50 Shot Mall, who are prominent members of the Folly Boys set, which is located in Motown, where his father Ranger was from. And on subreddits like Chiracology, D-Rose's affiliation is commonly put as 600/Folly Boys. Eventually, this lifestyle would bring him the nickname D-Rose, and although he used to be an avid basketball player and likely a fan of the actual player D-Rose, aka Derrick Rose, an NBA player from Chicago, the nickname D-Rose would in fact have a much more sinister meaning, with Tay 600 saying that he got the name because he only needs one shot to kill his ops.
You know, D-Rose, he wasn't always D-Rose, you know what I'm saying? He got his name D-Rose for only needing one. All I'm gonna say about that, Shorty only need one shot. It's over with. He don't need a lot of for him. He only need one.
Indeed, the court documents from the murder of FBG Duck would actually reveal that D-Rose was implicated in a murder that had taken place all the way back in 2011, when he would have been just 13 years old. This being the murder of a boy named Dale Fisher, also known as Squirrel, who was from STL's neighborhood. The allegation was that D-Rose was one of the shooters in Dale's murder, as told by FBG Butter, who famously became one of the cooperators in Duck's murder case in 2023, along with YouTuber Trenches News, with Butter allegedly telling the prosecution that he had witnessed D-Rose together with the short but super savage T-Roy from O-Block killing Dale in December 2011. Sadly, many members of STL and Dale's family claim that Dale was not even involved in the streets or gang life, but simply just hung around people who were. Shockingly, some people have even suggested that Dale might not have even been D-Rose's first body. Indeed, D-Rose's murder rap sheet allegedly runs a lot deeper than this. All the more shocking when you consider the fact that he was barely a teenager during these years. He was also rumored to have been involved in the murder of King Doc, real name Marlon Monroe, who was affiliated with the STL EBT set, specifically the EBT side. Doc was shot whilst walking near 63rd and St. Lawrence, the heart of STL's territory, when somebody opened fire while he was in front of a corner store, striking Doc once in the chest. Doc would then try to escape across the road and through a patch of tall weeds in an empty lot on the 6300 block of St. Lawrence, where he would ultimately succumb to his injuries, later being discovered by his relative, a boy named Modell McCambry. Now, anybody that's seen my video, King Von Rap's First Serial Killer, likely remembers that Modell himself would also meet an equally tragic ending not long after, with O-Block's King Von rumored to have been involved in both murders along with T-Roy. Anyway, following the social media activity of EBT members after Doc's death, it appeared that police thought that the Black Disciples were responsible. Particularly, Lamron and Brick City, aka 600, were their top suspects for this murder. However, many of the OG Brick City members were actually gangster disciples who had beef with members of Lamron just a few years earlier, as we know from Lil Durk's early lyrics dissing the set in his 2009 song R.I.P. Mo. Brick City's younger generation, on the other hand, were primarily Black Disciples, which ultimately became the default set for the new generation that called themselves 600. As Tay 600 implies on his 2021 song Way Back When, where he says that a lot of members were flipped from GD to BD when they joined 600. Online drill fans have long debated who from 600 might have been involved with the murder of Doc, with D-Rose actually being one strong contender. However, if that wasn't enough, there's also another completely different Doc that D-Rose had also allegedly rumored to have killed in 2012. This was a man called Lil Doc from the so-called No Love City on the west side of the Dan Ryan Expressway, more specifically from a set in that area that operates around 57th and Throop Street, although there's very little information available about this Doc altogether. What we do know from his cousin's tweets though is that he died on the the 13th of August 2012. The reason why some people think that D Rose had something to do with Lil Doc's death was also to do with his cousin's tweets, as following Doc's death, he would diss D Rose and 600 numerous times. However, what makes this case confusing is the fact that there's seemingly no news about a murder that took place on the 13th or 12th or 14th that would seemingly fit this case. The closest thing is a news article about a 19-year-old killed by security guards after shooting at them in the early morning hours of the 13th. This took place in the far south side suburb of Richton Park, which is possibly why some people claim that Doc was indeed killed during hitting a lick. However, this doesn't seem to match the description of his cousin, who later tweeted several times about the murder seemingly happening on their block. He even tweeted about running to the location where Doc had been shot, that location being on the Elizabeth Street right next to Throop Street. Doc's cousin would also claim that he knew who killed him, but later has implied that he doesn't know, with there seemingly being too many rumors out there. So it's very difficult to say whether rumors about D Rose's involvement in this murder are true. Furthermore, D Rose has also commonly been rumored to have been one of those involved in the killing of none other than Lil JoJo, the GD rapper who went to war with Lil Durk and Lil Reese's Lamron 300 set, and put an enormous target on his back when he released the song BDK, calling for all black disciples in Chicago to be killed. On the 4th of September 2012, JoJo dropped that song BDK and caused an avalanche of hate and death threats from black disciples. He would even post an infamous video where he confronts Lil Reese on the street, yelling at him whilst driving by.
Hey, Reese alone. Yeah. Hey, I am Brick Squad. Yeah, Brick Squad, boy. What you talking about, boy? We get up. Y'all heirs, man. Ain't no taking off. What's wrong with y'all, boy?
JoJo would seemingly not be scared of the black disciples that he'd upset, tweeting that he is outside on Brick Squad's territory, and it's believed that soon after this event, several cars traveled to the location searching for JoJo, where a security camera would capture him riding a bike together with another boy when a couple of cars would follow along behind them. Both JoJo and the first car would move beyond the camera's view, and soon the other boy can be seen running away from the scene in the opposite direction. One of those rumored to have been inside one of those cars was D Rose himself, while another popular suspect was a gang member called Poo Poo Man from an Inglewood-based BD set called SMB, or Sean Money Boys. He's perhaps best known by drill fans due to a bar in Chief Keef's classic diss track War from 2014, where he raps that he calls up Poo Poo Man when he needs someone killed. Anyway, after the murder, JoJo would be mocked all over the internet, including by members of 600 like LA Capone, and D Rose would also a few years later diss JoJo by joking about his favorite color on Twitter with King Von and Bite Down. These are only a few examples of murders that D Rose's name has been connected to whilst he was still incredibly young. Therefore, it's not a surprise then that once word spread of D Rose's activities, he would garner a lot of respect in the streets. Moreover, once drill music became a nationwide and global phenomenon around 2012, D Rose would become a drill celebrity without dropping a single song, particularly due to Chief Keef often shouting him out in songs portraying him as a teenage assassin. D Rose would even make a rare cameo in Keef's early music video for the song John Madden in 2011. Then, in October 2012, only about a month after Lil JoJo's death, Keef would also put out one of his biggest hits to date, Love Sosa, where he raps a line that would become a drill classic: "Don't make me call D Rose, boy, he's 600 boy, and he keep that pole, boy, you gon' get over." You know the bar. In fact, ever since October the 8th, 2012, when videographer D Gaines released a preview to the Love Sosa video ending on lyrics about D Rose, these lyrics would ultimately become a trend on Twitter. Although at this point, many listeners still thought that Chief Keef was actually talking about D Rose, the basketball player, causing a flurry of hilarious viral tweets with clueless fans in shock that a professional basketball player, Derrick Rose, would be putting in work for 600 on the streets. As Tay600 would later explain on his YouTube channel, D Rose would perhaps become the first person in drill history to become famous for just being a shooter.
For yelling his name, you feel me? For yelling his name, and it's blowing up to the point where D Rose is becoming a celebrity, bro. Like D Rose was becoming a celebrity right before our eyes, folks. Like it got to a point with D Rose where D Rose, the guys around, like I seen for them turning into fans of D Rose, and he was not making a song. He didn't make a song. Like, he didn't make a song, bro. You feel me? It was just clout from being a savage. Like, I didn't understand it, like this. He was the first to do that. Like, become known off being savage. You feel me? Like, that was just real loud. I never seen that before in person, in a rack. You know what I'm saying? But D Rose was blowing up like some type of celebrity. You know what I'm saying?
with D Rose's name ringing hard in the streets at this time, and it's even said that he repped as many as 7 different gang sets, or at least had very close ties with them, with these sets being 600, TYMB, O-Block, THF46, Front Street, Lamron, and the Folly Boys. According to Tay 600, even the infamous shooter Tay Savage, aka Chicago's John Wick, all the way from Welch World in the low end, would attempt to recruit D Rose to join his Welch World set because he knew what a serious shooter D Rose was in the streets.
It was disinsertions from his hood because they was in tour. Black pulled up to my crib and was looking for D Rose. He said, man, I'm BD. This man told me, he said, I ain't gonna lie, on Welch, I want him. I want Rose. Tell Rose I said hit my line, man. Tell Rose I said come with me. On BD, he said he got pipe, everything D Rose want. On BD, whatever Rose want, he got it for him. He gonna put Drake in his hand. He gonna put Drake, ARP, 30, whatever he want, whatever Rose want. On BD, he got it for Rose. And I'm just looking like, man, what on BD? What the f on, boy? That Rose, our slider, he's sliding for us on King David. He ain't gonna be on the hill now. Here I'm talking for Rose and BD whole time. Rose on BD, he probably would've rolled around with Takers. Rose like other gangsters too, folks. On BD, but Rose like other gangsters too on King David, folks. This man come to my crib trying to recruit D Rose, folks. It's just like, I'm just like, damn, on BD, you mean that much to you, folks? Like you don't got enough savages, enough guns, enough this and that, you feel me? Like you just want more artillery, more savages in your circle, more demons in your vicinity. On BD, he recruiting the gangsters.
Due to his young age and his reputation, even D Rose's mugshot would eventually go viral. In September 2012, D Rose would get arrested, causing some of the biggest savages in Chicago to call for his release. Chief Keef too would eventually tweet Free D Rose, together with an Instagram photo, finally letting even his mainstream audience know exactly who he was talking about in his songs. Other youngsters would even tweet to Keef, telling him how they had seen D Rose while they were in jail, and confirming that he was banging for 600 crazy whilst inside. While some people, seemingly associated with D Rose, would tweet, criticizing Keef for not bailing him out with his newfound rap riches, some seemingly thought that the arrest was even related to the murder of Lil JoJo due to the timing, but this wasn't the case, as someone would post from D Rose's own account. And his co-defendant Juice the Savage from Front Street would later tell that the case was actually for an unrelated armed robbery and attempted murder case allegedly taking place in a studio.
I mean, just taking a step back, so what was the case that y'all got locked up for? I mean, since it's in the past now, like, can you talk about it? You and D Rose?
Yeah, man. Said that me and D Rose got him trying to rob him, trying to take his money in the studio. They ended up locking us up. Somebody picked us out of the video, saying that me and D Rose did it to him.
Tay 600 would also tell how D Rose had in fact been wearing his black puffer jacket when the police had finally caught him.
He running around the hood, I get my coat. Now 2 days later, after me giving him my coat, we in a block, he peel off and get bumped. The got bumped in my coat, man. I wasn't blue, but I was like, damn. You feel me? I just got that damn coat, folks. Feel me? But look, the nigga get locked up in my coat, right? So now, this the picture, this, I don't know, this was his first mugshot he ever had. You feel me? Now, he gets locked up in my coat. I'm looking for the picture. This is his first mugshot ever. This is Twitter right here. This is my f***ing coat. That got locked up in my f***ing coat. I was blue.
However, at this time, D Rose was still a juvenile and therefore placed in a juvenile temporary detention center, or what's better known in Chicago as Audie Home, named after Arthur J. Audie, the superintendent of the first such center in Chicago. And as D Rose was a juvenile, he also wouldn't have a public mugshot taken until he was finally transferred to the county jail in June 2013 after turning 17. This mugshot would immediately go viral as Chief Keef fans could finally put a face to the name of the infamous Savage from the songs, immediately cementing D Rose's status as Chicago's #1 celebrity savage. And this mugshot mugshot would become iconic and was used in the covers of various 600's mixtapes, as well as on custom free D-Rose shirts which members would seemingly make and sell, but most famously, D-Rose's mugshot would eventually become the icon of the infamous subreddit Chiracology, where Chicago drill culture is discussed in depth on Reddit, ultimately cementing D-Rose as quite literally the poster boy for Chicago drill. Finally, in mid-January 2014, D-Rose would end up beating this case, getting back onto the streets of Chicago, and even his ops would immediately take notice of this. D-Rose was finally free, with all eyes on him and a whole world of opportunities in front of him. Perhaps had he taken rapping seriously, his life story could have taken a drastically different direction, but unfortunately, D-Rose was as gangster as it got, and rapping was secondary to his main career as a savage. And soon, he would return to the streets with his reputation as a shooter to live up to. And ultimately, it was only a matter of time before he'd find himself in trouble with the law, but before that could happen, numerous people would lose their lives to his hand. It would appear that D-Rose hit the streets running, ready to capitalize on his newfound fame, and soon after getting home, he could be seen hanging out with his famous rapper friends, including Chief Keef and Fredo Santana. He would also visit New York at least once with Fredo and his fellow 600 savages like Rondo No. 9, and he could even be seen hopping on the stage with mainstream rappers like A$AP Rocky whilst tagging along to shows with Fredo Santana. He would also make a few rare music video cameos, such as in the Rondo and C-Day music video for the classic drill anthem Bail Out, which was released about a week after D-Rose was released from jail, and in the music video for Fredo's song Always, featuring G Herbo and Capo from Glow Gang. Interestingly, D-Rose was also spending time at the studio, where he would now try his chops at rapping, seeing if he could parlay his reputation as a savage into rap stardom. He would begin to promote his debut mixtape The Return of D-Rose, and this time in the studio would result in several songs with numerous drill heavy hitters, such as the song Zico Pack with Rondo No. 9 from 600, Boss Top from O-Block, and Lil Herb aka G Herbo from No Limit. Zico Pack was a disrespectful diss towards the original 051 Young Money member who was murdered, as well as the song Long Nights with Juice the Savage, C-Day, Rondo No. 9 and Fredo Santana, along with production from the legendary DJ Ken, who produced a lot of the early songs for Chief Keef. It appeared that D-Rose's life was actually heading in the right direction, with signs that Fredo was even perhaps considering signing him to his SSR label that he had recently started. D-Rose would even do his first interview around this time, a very brief 46-second snippet where Rose was pretty much out of his mind.
Okay, man, it's D-Rose from 600, man. Follow me on Instagram. Speed Drive D-Rose. You know how I rock. You know, shout out all my blocks. Folks don't know how I'm rocking. I'm just, trying to be real hard. It's real hard, man. A lot of we just gonna get up together, the whole squad, the whole game. Free all the gas, rest in peace all the gas.
But while D-Rose was clearly trying to use his street fame to build a following and perhaps eventually a career in music and media, there were still signs that he hadn't left his old life in the streets alone, because the majority of his social media posts were still him hanging around in his old stomping grounds in the South Side, sliding in traffic with fellow members or from the sets that he was known to be close with. During one of these times he was out sliding, on the 11th of February 2014, Chicago police officers who were patrolling the West Inglewood neighborhood would notice a white Dodge Caravan that was double parked in a way that obstructed the street. The police decided to question the people in this vehicle, who would turn out to be D-Rose, Rondo No. 9, and C-Day. The police would question the trio, taking their personal information, as well as the information of the car, including the VIN number. Perhaps the Chicago police had an inkling that the occupants of this minivan were plotting to do much more than just double parking. And afterwards, the trio was seemingly allowed to continue on with their night, but the next day, however, things would get serious. On the 12th of February, a 14-year-old boy by the name of Venzel Richardson was out with his friends in the Woodlawn neighborhood. Venzel, also known as Big V, was a popular kid and well known within his area, and may have even had aspirations to make it in music, as can be seen in this 2012 music video that was made as part of a mentoring program for elementary students interested in the arts, where Venzel would rap about his neighborhood and his goals not to get sucked into the gang life.
Yes, it's why I'm Pete. My clique is unique. We stay on the mic. We never go to sleep. Always on the grind, never waste time. We avoid crime, bad bustin' rhymes. My swag is to hustle, not to cause trouble. Whatever you do, I can do double. My block is shady, everywhere I go, but I stay above it. You already know. What?
However, Venzel had a close relationship with members of the gang Taekwon World, as can be seen from this old picture of Venzel together with prominent member TB. However, it seems that as Venzel got a little bit older, the peer pressure and allure of gang life that he grew up around would prove too much to resist, as can be seen from later photos where he's seen posing with other gang members throwing up gang signs. as well as from his own social media posts where he can be seen posing with guns and throwing up more gang signs, taunting the police and his ops, as well as claiming his set Taekwon World, as well as V Block for Vernon Street and Mo Block for his friend Mo from Taekwon World, who had been killed in January 2014. Taekwon World was ultimately one of the gangs considered to be opposition of 600 and O Block, making Venzel a target for numerous shooters affiliated with the BDs like D Rose. Around 3 PM, Venzel would make his last post on Facebook, once again taunting his ops while implying that him and his friends were outside. A few hours later, at approximately 8:20 PM, Venzel and his friends were walking along the 6100 block of South Vernon Avenue. They were on their way back home after visiting a convenience store when a white van pulled up alongside them, somebody opening a sliding back door and aiming a gun at them. These young men would begin running in different directions, but Venzel was shot several times, including in the head, and he would end up dying at the scene. Venzel's friend, prominent Taekwon World member TB, real name Terry Barry, would later tweet his pain at the loss, suggesting that Venzel was innocent and not involved in the gang war. Meanwhile, the day of the shooting, around 8 PM, and then again around 9:55 PM, D Rose would post on his Instagram 2 photos of himself with Lamron members OJ and Chubbs, implying that between 8 and 10 PM, D Rose was with them, or at least that's what he wanted people to think, with these pictures of him inside a house intended as a perfect alibi. However, about a week later on the 18th of February, D Rose would post an incredibly incriminating post, holding a Nerf gun with a caption saying, "Bullets fly, no Nerf." This was a lyric from the song Chief and Keef by Chief Keef, but instead of ending the line with the lyric, "Change your ass like seasons be," D Rose would write, "Papa G on Vernon Street," the exact street where Venzel had been killed less than a week before. And to make matters worse, the police would work out that the pistol used in this murder was also the very same one used to kill Javon Boyd a few weeks later, placing the blame firmly on 600. But an arrest wouldn't come immediately, and for the time being, D Rose would continue living the good life, hanging out with his famous rapper friends like Fredo, Rondo, C-Day, E-Day, Boss Top, and Tado from Glow Gang, and his now increasingly famous gang member friends like T-Roy, King Von, and Doo-Wop from No Limit. And in the month that followed, D Rose would still seemingly be sliding in the streets, hunting down his enemies, eventually catching one of the most prominent enemies of 600, an infamous rapper who had been dissing 600 and their allies extensively. Lil Marc was a well-respected and popular member of the 051 Young Money gang. He had been releasing drill music since 2011, such as his famous track Zico World, a tribute to the fallen 051 member who 600 members would often diss. On the 24th of March 2014, Lil Marc released his latest diss song, No Competition. This track made Marc a prime target to 600, Lamron, O-Block, and other BD affiliates who were dissed in this song. The song title was a direct shot at Lil Durk and his OTF collective, as he had previously released a song titled Competition, and Lil Marc's remix would even make his intentions to diss Lil Durk and his OTF crew clear in the title. The lyrics for No Competition included numerous disrespected disses towards 600 and other enemies of 051 Young Money. Over a minute of the song's runtime is exclusively dedicated to dissing specific people by name, and in the opening verse, 600 is dissed 5 times with their dead members being disrespected, as well as OD Perry from Wick City, whose death led to the gang infamously renaming themselves O-Block, as well as a beloved girl named Keita from the Parkway Gardens who also died in 2009. The song clearly achieved what it set out to do, as just 3 days later on the 28th of March, 051 Young Money's enemies were out and looking for Lil Marc. At around 1:30 PM on the 300 block of East 51st Street in the city's Bronzeville neighborhood, 051 Lil Marc was waiting at a bus stop when a minivan would drive past, spotting him with one of the passengers raising a handgun with an extended clip and opening fire. Lil Marc would be shot in the head and he would die at the scene, and the shooter, reportedly wearing a mask, was unable to be identified. However, other assisting officers reported that the gunman's vehicle, a silver minivan with a Florida license plate, fled north and then went west. That minivan was later found in flames around 6:30 PM in the 3700 block of South Ellis Avenue. The murder took place right in front of a police observation device camera, and graphic photos of the murder scene were later shared to social media. Enemies of Lil Marc were ecstatic at the news of his death, and seemingly they had no regard to incriminating themselves soon after the crime. A video would be posted to social media very soon after the incident, which seemingly showed King Von, T-Roy, and D Rose driving back past the scene of the murder, filming the aftermath and saying, "Man down."
Hey, so 251st!
Damn, body down.
I was not gonna see you on the finger, bro.
I'm not.
Tweaking, bro.
Body down. 51st. Gang.
Man down!
In fact, the target of the original diss song No Competition, Lil Durk, would even visit the very bus stop where the murder took place, calling it a very famous place.
Bus stop, man. Hey, this bus stop right here, though. This a real famous place. Yeah, this a real famous place, B. Hey, this bus stop, this a real famous place, B. I ain't gonna lie to you. You know what I'm saying?
Although no one was convicted of the murder, it's widely speculated that 600, and specifically D Rose, may well have been involved in the killing, while being accompanied by King Von and T-Roy from O Block. The same night after the murder, D Rose was posting to Twitter claiming that he was smoking on Lil Marc, followed by the tweet, "I'm going in, no problem, ain't gotta ask who shot him," the next morning. Those were lyrics from a March 16th, 2014 release from Prince Dre from O Block featuring 600's own E-Day. King Von, on the other hand, had tweeted throughout the night and day of the 28th all about the murder, something he had a habit of doing at the time. Right after midnight, Von would even tweet that D Rose was back in town, to which D Rose would respond a few hours later that the police hate to see him out sliding with Von and T-Roy, showing that they were clearly up to no good that day and very likely bragging about having something to do with the crime. Then, just a few hours after the murder of Lil Marc, Von begun tweeting, going on a crazy tirade, dissing Lil Marc and 051, starting by saying "Die Y" with a bunch of laughing emojis, as well as taunting them for Marc's death and telling them to keep their head up. And then, in a truly sad display of how childhood friends had turned into mortal enemies, EBK Juice, who was King Von's friend from his original Hood Kill Award, would tweet what seemed to be a genuine tribute to Lil Marc. This reflected the past when Juice, Marc, and Von had all seemingly been close enough to spend time together, but now Von would simply reply to the tweet by acting surprised, together with a bunch of laughing emojis, showing that Von was truly over the moon by the fact that a once childhood school friend was now dead and he might have had something to do with it. This ruthless attitude would become even clearer from his next tweet, where he would say that he truly lived for the gang life and killing. A girl would then ask Von where he was, to which Von replied he was still in traffic listening to the song Zico Pack with D Rose, which disses a dead 051 member. 8 minutes later, an O Block member would ask Von if he was coming to Parkway that night, to which Von would reply, "Of course," because they had to celebrate. And a few hours later, he was back home, seemingly noting that the mission had been completed. Like many murders in the Chicago gang wars, D Rose could not stop himself from taunting 051 Young Money after Lil Marc's murder, even at the cost of revealing incriminating evidence that could have easily helped a murder investigation against him. As mentioned in the earlier article, a witness had spotted the gunman holding an extended magazine on his pistol, something that D Rose was now flexing on Instagram just 2 days after the murder, even writing in the image caption that it's an extension, so the clip's sticking out. That same day, he would also tweet that he was not a real rapper, but a gravedigger, and a day after that, he would post a video in which he states that he's tired of smoking on Tuka, so this here is Lil Marc.
I'm tired of smoking Tuka, so, this one I'm finna be smoking at. It's called Lil Marc.
Eerily, 2 months before his death, Lil Marc would tweet at D Rose, letting him know they were enemies. Clearly black disciples from numerous gang sets like 600, O Block, and Lamron were delighted that the most famous rapper from 051 had now been killed. And during this time, the streets of Chicago would be incredibly active, as only a day after Lil Marc's murder, another one of 600's most hated rivals, the man who allegedly killed Jizzle, would end up losing his life too. On the 29th of March 2014, a prominent STL EBT member by the name of Lil B was being chased by the police in the 6200 block of South Rhodes Avenue. Police would claim Lil B, real name Russ On Shore, pointed a gun at them, prompting the officer to open fire, killing Lil B. And a harrowing video of the aftermath of the killing would circulate online following the incident. Later, local news would show the aftermath of the shooting, with angry crowds gathering who saw this as another example of the police using excessive force against a young black man.
A deadly shootout in the middle of a Chicago street in the middle of the morning. A suspect allegedly pulls a gun on police who fired fatal shots. Police say they were chasing a suspected drug dealer.
A massive police presence between Eberhard and Rhodes on 63rd. Patrol cars, blue lights flashing after a police-involved shooting. Friends say 19-year-old Rasan Shah had just left them to get something to eat.
He was running through the alley with no gun or nothing, because he just left us, so we know he ain't had no gun. The police shot him unjustified. Too many times in his back. He ain't do nothing, man.
Chicago Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 7 spokesperson Pat Camden says Shaw was caught by police in the middle of a drug deal. They went after him. Camden says Shaw pointed a gun at police.
The officer defends himself, shoots the offender. We did recover a .40 caliber Glock with an extended clip.
Chaos erupts after the shooting. An angry mob gathers.
The rumor starts to spread that he didn't have a gun, the police shot him for no reason. Nothing could be further from the truth. If you're carrying a gun and you're stopped by the police, put your hands up in the air, and I guarantee you, you won't get shot. Point a gun at a policeman, and I guarantee you, you will get shot.
And that's what happened in this case.
Absolutely.
After his death, allies of Lil B would share memories, many describing how he had been a menace and even killed numerous ops. However, D Rose from 600 would post several videos mocking Lil B to social media shortly after his death. On April the 1st, he would post a video dissing both Lil Marc and Lil B, as well as several other dead people, even after claiming he had just prayed.
I just got done prayer, but it's still Lil Marc, Lil B.
On April the 3rd, he would post himself in traffic while again dissing Lil B. It's believed that D Rose had a grudge against Lil B as he had been previously shot by him, but D Rose was committed to living the gang life, and his favourite activity would become driving around with other members looking for the ops, whilst listening to the man that had given him the increasingly large follower base that he now had, Chief Keef. On April the 12th, D Rose would post a video of himself walking on the block with other members, saying that they were on their way to get these pills and do these drills.
Stress gang out here.
Gang. Tag me and break gang.
Stress gang. Yeah. Look, you got white folks on the block. We finna go get these pills and do these drills.
3 days later, he would once again post a video dissing Lil B, calling him Lil, and also dissing KI, the female STL member who had allegedly been killed by King Von from O Block just a few days before this.
Hey, Lil B. No, for move that, folks. We getting off a lot of Kyra. Lil B. Lil B. You want to talk stuff about that dead person? I'm finna put the camera on you.
On April the 27th, D Rose would post a video of himself hanging in the Parkway Gardens, aka O Block, with O Block members like Big A once again dissing Lil B and KI.
Oh, hello, stress gang. Kyra.
And later that day, he would post another video telling that somebody had shot him and others in the legs, together with the caption, "Ain't on piss," showing that he wasn't even scared of getting shot.
Still out here, man, these bitches just shooting on my leg, man. It ain't shit, man. We still up on this L block. Late night, me and Maintain, you know, they was just shooting at our legs, little King David.
Unfortunately for D Rose, however, while he was seemingly celebrating the deaths of numerous ops that he had hated, whilst himself clearly feeling invincible, his days were in fact numbered, and very shortly after this, the authorities would ultimately catch up with him and take him off the streets for good. On Monday, April the 28th, everything would come crashing down as the news reported that D Rose had been arrested and charged with the murder of Venzel, with D Rose being held on $1 million bail, and news articles even mentioning D Rose's affiliation with 600 and famous drill rappers like Chief Keef. Shockingly, despite the famous and rich friends that D Rose supposedly now have, particularly Chief Keef and Fredo Santana, nobody would come to bail him out, because this would have likely required a 10% payment of the $1 million bail, meaning in this case $100,000, with 10k of that being completely non-refundable. Perhaps nobody felt like bailing out Chicago's biggest savage was a great investment of money, and so D Rose would begin a long wait for his trial behind bars, with members of 600 and his other friends settling for tweeting about wanting him free and claiming his innocence, rather than actually bailing him out. The trial of D Rose would eventually take place in late 2016. Later court documents provide a picture of a rather messy trial where the kids who had been with Venzel that tragic night were now witnesses. And while at the time of the murder, they had still been rather young like Venzel himself, in the years that followed, they had since grown up, many of them seemingly becoming more active in the gang lifestyle themselves, such as Daryl Johnson, who was known as D-Money from Taekwon World, and Jaron George, who was known as Mook from Taekwon World. Both D-Money and Mook seemingly originally indicated D Rose as the shooter, but during the trial, they would deny any identification, as it seems that the no snitching policy had since become a guiding rule in their lives as the years had gone on and they had gotten deeper into the streets following the murder. However, others like D-Money's older brother would testify that D Rose was indeed the shooter even during the trial, and in the end, D Rose was indeed found guilty, being sentenced to 40 years in prison for the murder of Venzel. Around the same time, D-Money would tweet from his personal account, repeating his stance from the trial that D Rose didn't actually kill Venzel. Perhaps this really was the case, and D-Money hadn't actually seen D Rose at the scene like he originally told police in 2014. Or perhaps he was simply fully committed to his new stance of no snitching, instead wanting to face D Rose in the streets and get personal vengeance. Because D-Money would then grow up to become a feared member of Taekwon World and an alleged killer himself. At one point, he would even allegedly be captured on O-Block security cameras with his friends, creeping and scoping for a victim, eventually killing a man who ended up not even being from O Block. He would even allegedly film himself on Instagram Live only moments before the murder and would then beg a YouTuber who had recorded the live to delete it off of their channel. Unfortunately, as usually comes with that life, D-Money would eventually meet the same fate, as he was killed in 2021 on his home turf of Woodlawn. And after D-Money's death, another Taekwondo World member called 2 Times would post a tribute to D-Money, implying that D-Money had killed a total of 3 people. D-Rose, on the other hand, would appeal his conviction, but this wouldn't help either. In 2019, the appellate court would affirm his sentence. But still, there's plenty of people who have spoken out about D-Rose apparently being innocent, including his old co-defendant, Juice the Savage. Also, the YouTuber Trenches News, who used to be close with many sets around Washington Park and the Woodlawn neighborhoods, as well as the members of 600 like Tay and 600 Breezy, who following the appeal loss would post on his Instagram calling D-Rose an innocent man. There's also been many attempts to fundraise and raise awareness for his case or another appeal, but these have ultimately gone nowhere. Still, the alternative theories amongst drill fans list numerous other suspects, with one theory circulating online suggesting that Lil Boo from 600 was responsible. This theory is supported by the fact that 600 Breezy would claim in a DJ Vlad interview that the person who shot Venzel was a 600 member who is in fact now dead.
And then you can tell them a lot, like if you heard of D-Rose is locked up right now for a murder that he didn't even commit. He wasn't even around just off his name. They found him guilty because people are going to court saying he did. But truth is, one of our homies that got killed, D-Rose didn't do it. But I can't go, we don't know how to go and go about that. Like, that's still, even though he gone, it's still like snitching. Like, but still, like, they ain't gonna try to believe that D-Rose.
So if D-Rose came to you and said, listen, I need you to come in and testify and say that this dude who's now dead did the crime that I'm in jail for life for so I could go home,
I wouldn't be able to do it because I wasn't there.
Okay.
I'm not putting
so also someone would have to be there.
And as we'll soon discuss, Lil Boo would unfortunately end up losing his life about a year after the murder of Venzel. This theory would also explain a tweet from Mook after the death of Lil Boo where he disses him while saying RIP Venzel. There are even theories that the shooter wasn't a member of 600, with one theory suggesting that Front Street member Lil Los may have actually been the shooter. This has been supported by Taekwondo World members commonly tweeting Front Street K or 061K, which is the main street that Front Street claim, as well as Savage Squad K, which is another Front Street affiliated set named after the record label of Front Street's most famous rapper, Fredo Santana. Venzel's close friend TB, or Terry Barry from Taekwondo World, has even claimed that he believes D-Rose is innocent too, while seemingly implying that the real culprit was from Front Street, even claiming that Capo from Front Street was shot as Get Back. This is particularly interesting given that TB has often been considered the one who actually killed Capo. However, overall, the tweets from Taekwondo World members would suggest that the killer was in fact from 600, with 051 Driller even tweeting that he was smoking on Big V and even shouting out 600 despite both sets beefing with 600 due to the war between Taekwondo World and 051. However, perhaps the most interesting theory is based on the facts known about this case that came out in the trial, as there's one particular fact that has many people convinced about who the shooter was, and that's the description about the clothing that the shooter was supposedly wearing. With this description coming from D-Money, who had immediately following the shooting described to the detectives that the shooter was wearing a white cap, white shirt, and red pants. This is interesting because at the time, there was a member of 600 who would commonly wear red pants, and that person had also been in the supposed murder vehicle just a night before Venzel was killed. That person wasn't D-Rose, but instead C-Day, who had practically made wearing red pants his trademark at the time. Of course, this alone doesn't prove anything, but this detail has led to many people to believe that D-Rose was in fact innocent of the most high-profile murder that was ultimately pinned on him, getting him 40 years. However, the prosecutor would in fact make one of their key arguments in the trial the fact that the witness not only knew D-Rose from social media, but they also knew the other 2 people who had been seen in the alleged murder vehicle the night before, C-Day and Rondo, and thus they would have recognized if one of them had been the shooter instead. Nevertheless, if you believe D-Rose was not responsible, it would seem that the Chicago police are still aware of D-Rose's reputation as an infamous killer, and were looking to do anything they could to get him off the streets. King Von would actually refer to this in his song What It's Like, where he would rap in a verse that he was in the jail cell with D-Rose when he received his sentence. And Von ends the song with a chilling outro where he claims that the same detective that locked up Rondo, C-Day, and D-Rose bragged to Von about locking up his friends and told him he intended to do the same thing to him when he was facing the murder charge of Malcolm Stuckey, a charge that Von ultimately ended up beating, coming back at the end of 2017. Von claimed that that detective had told him that locking up him and his friends was was like a game to them. But interestingly, Chicago police are refusing to release any reports concerning the murder of Venzel beyond the original incident report, claiming that the investigation is still ongoing or that the reports are still incomplete. For those believing in theories about foul play on behalf of the CPD, this certainly raises more questions. But let's not forget that for these gang members, killing their enemies or even innocent people just for where they're from is also a game. And ultimately, whether or not you agree with everything the police do in Chicago, the fact is, taking someone like D Rose off the street is being done for the safety of the public. And perhaps had he not become famous the world over for being a shooter and killer, then perhaps the police might not have worked so hard to lock him up by any means. On the other hand, Tay600 would reminisce on Twitter, saying that D Rose had basically grown up in the prison system since he was just a young teenager. This combined with the fact that he would become known amongst drill fans as a cold-hearted killer at such a young age due to rappers like Chief Keef hyping him up, then it's understandable to see why his life would take the unfortunate trajectory that it did. Ultimately, once again, another 600 member had been taken off the streets, losing their future to the gang war that made them famous. But going forward, even with prominent members off the streets, either dead or in jail on both sides, as the year went on, the remaining members would continue to wage war in those streets, and in music, as songs would go viral detailing the losses on both sides of the war, with twisted lyrics claiming to be keeping score of the tragedies, and in the process giving the whole world an insight into exactly what was going on in 600's hood.